It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Did you know publishing classified information is a crime, Mr. Producer? You know this, under the Espionage Act. They might say, but what about reporters? It doesn't make any difference. Reporters have been prosecuted for doing exactly that. The Espionage Act. We've heard enough about the Espionage Act, haven't we, folks? Yeah, they tried to apply it against President Trump, for crying out loud. But if a reporter publishes classified information, that reporter, at least arguably, and I would say strongly, can be considered as violating the Espionage Act. So let's take a listen to Jeffrey Goldberg on Meet the Depressed Sunday. The media cannot get enough of this, and they keep pushing it. The leakers keep going to Axios and Politico, two radical left-wing sites, and that's because the leakers and the radical left-wing agree. They agree that America is responsible for Iran wanting to have a nuclear weapon. America is responsible for Russia invading Ukraine. America is responsible for communist China wanting to muscle up and take over Taiwan. The America hate crowd pretending they're the America love crowd. Kristen Welker is a phony, a fraud, and a fake. She's the moderator, so-called, of Meet the Depressed. She's no Tim Russert. She's no Joel Spivak. Well, she could be a Chuck Todd, though, but that's his problem. Cut one, go.
Do you believe the information on that group chain was classified?
By the way, look at the drama. Now, you know he does. He's already said he does. That's the Jeffrey Goldberg. And so, do you believe it was classified? Go ahead.
Answer it this way. When the texts are coming over as I'm watching them unfold.
Now, this is what gets me. So he's there. He doesn't tell them, hey, look, I shouldn't be here. Stop sending me texts. I'm out of here, but you need to fix this. He's sitting there, knowing he's not supposed to be there, reading the texts as, quote-unquote, they unfold. So he's not a patriot. And he's not gathering the information for Snoop because he doesn't use the information in real time. And if he had used it in real time, he would have been prosecuted. Go ahead.
7:44 a.m. On a Saturday, Pete Hegseth is promising that U.S. warplanes are taking off in 30 minutes to bomb enemy targets that we know are protected by anti-aircraft batteries. Okay? So if that's not the most sensitive information, the most secret information in the world, I simply don't know what the meaning of classified or secret or top secret is.
Okay, so here he's confessing. Because now it's Sunday, yesterday. He's already put out two articles. One, the fact of the texting. The second, some of the information, not most of it, within the texting. He hung on to gather it. And then he published it. And he insists, if that's not classified information or top secret information, then I don't know what is. Now, maybe it is, maybe it's not. He still didn't. He said they're going to bomb in 2 hours. Again, we don't have sites, we don't have tactics, but it's okay. Let's say it is. Let's say it is. Shouldn't this man not be questioned? Certainly by me. You know what, Mr. Producer, let's make a request for Jeffrey Goldberg to be interviewed by me on radio here about the classified information that he insists was on the texts, and I'm not going to debate it. I'm not going to dispute it. I just need to know more about it. I need to know what he did with it. I want to know where he stored it. I want to know if he shared it with anybody else. He shared some in his publication, and why shouldn't he be prosecuted under the Espionage Act? These are very simple questions. I don't think they should be viewed as provocative, Mr. Producer. What, just because the left-wing media doesn't ask? Whoever knowingly publishes or uses in any manner prejudicial to the safety and the interests of the United States is subject to prosecution. And it's not like it was an accident on his part. It was an accident on the part of those who were texting, but not his, because he waited. He listened in. You hear what he says. He was watching them as the texts were coming in. He obviously printed them out, referenced them in one publication, and the next time it was published, quoted from them to insist that they're classified. Now, he insists they're classified. I saw, who else? Fox's reporter insisted they're classified. Over at MSNBC and CNN, they insisted they're classified. I saw Mark Warner. He insists it's classified. I think every Democrat insists it's classified. So it seems to me it's an open and shut case about Jeffrey Goldberg. The question is whether any senator or Republican in the House or the Senate has any guts to push this, or whether the Department of Justice does. That's the question. By the way, a side note, as somebody who did work at the Department of Justice for some time at the highest level, and the Attorney General and I and others worked very closely with the FBI, with the director of the FBI. We knew about big-time cases as they were happening, especially in the international front, especially in the front involving politicians, because they would come to us. That is, the FBI. People need to understand, there are lightweights, grifters, all forms of malcontents on the internet, blogging or what have you. Where are the prosecutions right now? Where are they? Of X, Y, Z and ABC. They're there. They've been there what? 4 weeks? I think Bongino got sworn in 2 weeks ago. Cash got sworn in 3 or 4 weeks. Where is it? It doesn't work that way over there. Well, it's supposed to. No, it's not. Unless you want these guys to get set up by the career FBI types in the mid-level or higher-level positions. You got to build your cases so they don't backfire. This is a criminal matter. This isn't about somebody going on TV and popping off, or somebody going on radio and popping off, or somebody in boxer shorts with a 5-day growth on their face, shoving M&Ms in their mouth at 4 a.m, blogging and complaining about, let's say, a Cash or a Bongino or somebody. Why hasn't this happened already? So ignore those people. They're ignoramuses. They don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they would blow up every single case. They would. They would blow up every single case. And so I want somebody to tell me why the Espionage Act does not apply to Jeffrey Goldberg. It's nothing to do with the First Amendment, nothing to do with the fact that he's a reporter. That's all been litigated in the past. People have spent a lot of time in jail for refusing to give up information just over leaks. This is bigger than a leak. This is Jeffrey Goldberg announcing, insisting, printing, going on TV again and insisting that this was classified information. So it's not a hard case. It's not a hard case at all. And I'm not running interference. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm watching this. The guy just confessed over and over again, and that's why I want him to come on the show, and I want to talk to him about this. I don't think he will, but he's certainly welcome to. And we have Senator Mark Warner. He's a complete reprobate. Look how they spread out. So you have Goldberg on Meet the Press. You have Warner on ABC this week. You also have Warner on Face the Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, there are big things going on in this country and in the world. Very big, serious things. This is not one of them. Nothing happened as a result of this. It's being investigated. It'll be fixed. So they're trying to turn this into something that it's not. And we're not spending all evening on it either. but I've got to push back as only I can. I'll let you know about this Jeffrey Goldberg if we even hear from him. So here's Mark Warner on ABC this week. He was also on Face the Nation. I think he was on with Shannon Breen, too, wasn't he, Mr. Producer? I mean, he was hitting all the Sunday shows. All the Sunday shows. Almost all of them. Because they're trying to turn this into a scandal that takes down Trump, that we have resignations with Hegseth, maybe Waltz. That's what's going on here. Cut 3, go.
There have been very strong denials from the administration that there was anything classified. So quite simply, was this classified information or not?
Absolutely. It was of such a nature when you were doing the actual battle plans and the timing, what type of aircraft are being sent.
Not to split hairs here, but the Secretary of Defense has the power, as a matter of federal statute, to classify and declassify. So Warner knows this, Raditz knows it. They've been around long enough time. So basically, if the Secretary of Defense is revealing something, he can say it is or is not classified. You're not talking about documents. So, they didn't stamp classified on it. It doesn't go through a whole array of bureaucrats to determine whether it's classified or not. So it is somewhat of a nebulous area, to be perfectly honest with you. It's certainly not cut and dry like they're trying to make it. But that said, they're making it cut and dry, and I'm saying by doing so, Mr. Goldberg could be a prosecution target. There's simply no question about this. Go ahead.
If you had been a traditional military officer or a CIA caseworker, and you were this sloppy and careless with this classified information, you would be fired.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Robert Malley was the envoy to Iran in this administration at a senior level, prior administration, I should say. He wasn't fired. In fact, one of his underlings, where there were serious issues raised, and I did a whole show on this Saturday on Life, Liberty, and Living, but you folks know about this, was back-channeling to the Iranians. Not only wasn't she fired, she got a promotion, a significant position at the Department of Defense. So this guy's a fraud, and he's a liar, Mark Warner. Not only that, Mark Warner didn't demand any heads. He didn't demand any resignations. He didn't demand any investigations. And even now, when I was here I am on national radio all over the world. Over the weekend, I'm on national TV, Fox, all over the world. He knows what I'm saying. He knows this to be true. He said nothing about Malley. That involves nuclear weapons, ladies and gentlemen. He said nothing. He said nothing about the underlings. He didn't write letters. He didn't demand resignation. He didn't do any of this. Neither did any of these Democrats. Not one of them. None of them. Go ahead.
Signal is safer than your normal cell phones. It is encrypted. But if Ms. Bondi had looked at any of the guidance from the intelligence community, which states explicitly, do not use Signal for classified information.
Now, if that's true, then our folks were set up. Because the Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, and the rest of them, folks, they're not involved in setting up the call. They can be involved in, here are the numbers, we need these people on the call. But they have the so-called experts and security personnel around them. And if they didn't think Signal was good, then they should have set it up a different way. I've never heard that you're not supposed to use Signal. I never have. And neither is Warner. What Warner's doing now is he's going back, he's looking for arguments, they're contacting people who will give them the arguments that they want, that there's guidance from the intelligence community. Says, do not use Signal for classified information. Well, then what do you use it for, Rich? What do you use encrypted phone calls if not to discuss something that's classified? I don't understand. Neither does he. It doesn't matter. He's a fraud and a phony. Go ahead.
I use Signal to talk to someone.
She asked him, do you use Signal? He says, I use Signal to talk to someone because it's safer. Go ahead.
I actually encourage people to use Signal, but that still doesn't mean because it's safer, you can put classified information.
Yeah, but you sit on a committee. You were the chairman, and now you're the ranking chairman, ranking member, and I guarantee you use Signal to discuss classified information. I'd bet everything on it. Everything. How about this, Senator Warner, since you're putting yourself out there and making allegations and propositions on your own? How about you provide your phone, in which you use Signal, to the Inspector General at the Department of Defense? Obviously, you're not required to. You're a senator, but why don't you do that? Lead by example so we can all take a peek. All you guys are so sinister and outrageous. Cut 4, go.
David Martin, my exceptional colleague here at CBS, has reported that the Israelis are furious about this because they believe those who would read that could sort of backward engineer that and find something out that they shouldn't find out.
I have a feeling the Israelis are not furious with the United States. I don't care who Martha or whomever it was spoke to. I know the Prime Minister is very grateful to the United States and the President of the United States and everything that's done. And it's funny you should bring up the Israelis. When a CIA agent, right under the nose of the CIA in Virginia, Langley, actually leaked their war plans against Iran under Biden.
Mark Levin. Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Let's cut to the chase here. What happened on the floor of the House today with the Republicans? You have one Republican, and she's insisting that there be an exception made for pregnant women who are members of Congress to be able to vote by proxy. And this is the family way, she was explaining, and so forth and so on. And vast majority of Republicans said, no, we don't believe in voting by proxy. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you can have voting by proxy for people who have terminal cancer, they're elected to the House, or have these terrible accidents and so forth and so on. I don't support voting by proxy. It's not something that was ever even discussed, let alone thought about, by the original members of the House or the Senate. Things happen. If you get pregnant, you have an accident, something horrible happens, something wonderful happens, whatever it is. You either show up and vote or you don't. It's like voting generally in the public. I mean, you have to have a really big-time excuse not to show up to vote. I don't think pregnancy used to be one of them. But it's not anti-woman or anti-family. You're elected to Congress. You can have whatever private life you want. That's perfectly fine. Or terrible things happen and wonderful things happen, but you don't vote by proxy. The Democrats do that. You have to show up and vote. And so 9 of the Republicans got upset, and they shut down the House of Representatives. There can be no votes for the next week. Effectively, that's what they did. And I'm sitting here and thinking, I'm sick and tired of this crap. I am really so sick and tired of this crap. They've got a budget bill they have to pass, the Trump budget bill. They've got to get a massive tax cut in place, or we're going to have a horrific recession, and we're going to lose the House, and we're going to be spending the next 2 years dealing with impeachment of Donald Trump. I'm telling you right now, I'm sick and tired of these narcissists. I am sick and tired of these prima donnas who keep using the fact that there's a very thin majority in the House to have their little friggin' tantrums. They're not going to get what they want. They don't have the votes. They couldn't persuade enough of their colleagues to get it. So you don't shut down the whole damn thing where the rest of the nation is sitting here wondering what the hell's going on with you people. We need the budget priorities. We need the money moving towards securing the border. We need to muscle up our defense. We need to slash the waste and the fraud, and there's a lot of it. Shut down the damn House of Representatives? And then there's the Senate. The House passes, by the narrowest of margins, because that's all they have, a budget that the president wanted, that we talked about. It's as good as you're going to get. There's really no growth in it. There's a change of priorities. And it goes to the Senate. What do? They're sitting on the damn thing because they don't like certain aspects of it. Well, what are you going to do? Send it back to the House where it can't pass because the majority's so thin? I mean, seriously, folks. If they don't get Trump's budget through, And if they don't get his tax cuts through, and they need to be massive, they need to be across the board to have an impact, we're going to have a hell of a recession right in the midterms, and they're going to take the House and maybe the Senate. And so all the great progress that's been made is going to be halted. Now that's the big picture. That's the reality. That's how it works. I'm sick and tired of these imbeciles. I really am. A handful every time. A handful every time. If their arguments are so important and so persuasive, why can't they get 50 members to vote with them? They never can. They can't get 50 out of 221. They can never get 50. I think the most they ever had was like 30. But whatever. These people had 9. And so they throw in with the Democrats. You can't have this constant blackmail, this constant threatening. We're a tiny, tiny minority. It's not even a normal minority. It's a tiny, tiny minority. Become the tail that wags the dog. No. No. There's 2 priorities right now, and just 2. Get that damn budget passed, and let's get those tax cuts in place, because if you don't get them in place, it's going to be too late. It takes time for tax cuts to have an impact. And I'm sick and tired of tax cuts will create debts. They never have. Spending creates debts and yearly deficits. What's the difference between government spending and cutting taxes for the private sector? I'll tell you what the difference is. The government prints money, which creates inflation. The private sector doesn't print money. If the private sector, you, me, and the rest of us, can keep more of our money, it's our money. It's the private sector money. We're not printing anything. The money is used for capital investment. It's used for R&D. It's used to raise salaries, to expand businesses. It's used to invest so you can borrow money at a lower rate for a home or a car or whatever you want. Tax cuts in the private sector have nothing to do with massive government spending, where they print money and they dole it out, regardless of economic conditions or outcomes. Either you believe in market capitalism or you believe in central government socialism. There's a distinction between the two. I know the media try and create an ambiguity. I know people on TV going, well, those tax cuts will create massive deficits. No, they don't. Even during Reagan, if you look back, the tax cuts didn't create deficits or a debt. The spending did. And he shut the damn government down 6 different times. But then what happens? Like what happened today. You get a handful of Republicans that throw in with the Democrats. And that's what they did. They didn't get their proxy voting. I've had enough of this. I've had a hell of enough of this. It can't just be the president through executive orders. Those executive orders can be reversed within the first 15 seconds of a Democrat president. The Republicans have to step up, and to their credit, the vast majority of them have. But we cannot have renegades, not because they're more conservative than the next guy, not because they're more prudential than the next guy. We cannot have renegades when we have a 3 friggin' vote majority who say, I want proxy voting for pregnant members. Or we're shutting down the whole damn House of Representatives. They sound like leftists. Gee, what did we do before in the entire history of our country? Or at least when we had women in the House and the Senate, what did they do? You know, I remember my grandmother. I remember my mother. My wife. They all got pregnant. My grandmother, they were so poor. She ran a pub in Philadelphia. That's what she did. She leased it and ran it. My mother and my father, dirt poor, in a ground apartment in North Philadelphia, started their own small business, a nursery school. She had a teacher's degree and a day camp during the summer. They did everything with their hands. They never stopped working, and they raised 3 rambunctious boys. They asked for nothing. Nothing. It wouldn't even have occurred to them. They didn't do that back then. They asked for nothing. My mother worked like a dog while she was pregnant. My wife, throughout her career, she built her career from the bottom up. Nobody handed her anything. Proud of it. To this day, proud of what she did. While pregnant. Having little kids. Of course it's hard. It's very hard. And it's incredibly rewarding. So I've been raised by and been around strong women who worked their entire lives while they had babies. And I got to hear these young women in Congress say that they want proxy voting if they get pregnant? Is that how it works, ladies and gentlemen, where you live? Is that how it goes? If you have a small business or you work for a small business or if you have a bodega or something like that and you get pregnant, hey, over here, I want a government check. I want proxy that. No! You'll starve to death. It's incredible to me. And so we'll shut the friggin' House of Representatives down. They have a temporary majority. Who the hell knows what's going to happen the next election? You think the Democrats waste time? They never waste time. Here we are, fighting over this, when they ought to be doing something more productive. Donald Trump is 78. He acts like he's 48. Day in and day out, he's doing things. Day in and day out. Is it too much to ask these 9 Republicans and all the rest of them to get off their ass and do something? Is it too much to ask the Republicans in the Senate, get off your ass, get that bill in the House passed, get it on Trump's desk and sign the damn thing? Is it too much to ask to get that tax cut through and to do it now? Do it now. No, it's not too much to ask. My God.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
Center for Immigration Studies is a great site. FAIR is another great site. But looking at CIS, a March 31 New York Post exclusive reveals that ICE has arrested 113,000 removable aliens from the interior of the United States and has already deported more than 100,000 in 70 days. Under Trump. That's blistering pace not seen in more than a decade. Notwithstanding popular media claims that Trump's deportation efforts are lagging behind Biden's in 2024. That's a lie. But then again, it's the media. 70 days passed between Trump's inauguration. On average, ICE is deporting roughly 1,430 aliens per day. More importantly, arresting and taking into custody another more than 1,600 illegal aliens. It's incredible, isn't it? It goes on. Got a ways to go, unfortunately. Biden's deportation versus Trump's. 100,000 deportations under Trump reported. It's an average about 1,430, as we said, per day. March 10th, NBC News published an article headlined, Trump deported fewer people last month than Biden a year ago, but border crossings have plummeted. Either the Post is wrong, that is the New York Post, or NBC News is. But given that the Office of DHS has published official DHS deportation numbers through the end of November 2024. My money's on the Post sources being more accurate. What they're saying is the government's numbers themselves that are being posted, that are being used, don't prove the point that the media, NBC News, is making. And so I seriously doubt this. And if it's true, does anybody remember all these lawsuits against Biden or the Biden administration on deportations? I don't remember them. There weren't a whole slew of them, that's for sure. And then, again, this is how the media conduct themselves. They lie. Bakari Sellers, former what, Rich? Former congressman from South Carolina. Boy, they'll drag in anybody over there at the Constipated News Network. This is un-American not to give due process, and I want to break that down a little bit in a moment, but let's hear it. Cut two, go.
How about this? If you committed a crime, get out of here. However, if your only crime, which is not a crime pursuant to the Supreme Court, is being here illegally, you deserve the benefit of due process. And if you cannot say yes to that, that is one of the more anti-American things I've ever heard.
And this is how Republicans are drifting us towards
county sheriffs to cooperate.
A regime
they do cooperate. All you got to do is call.
But the thing is that you have people that are.
Hold on, guys.
What you're not understanding is that cities like mine are actually taking people who are convicted of crimes. They commit another crime. They release them back onto the streets. They are not turning them over to ICE for deportation. That's why we have the crisis that we have. That's why we had 2,000 crimes in my city alone.
That's interesting. I barely could understand it. Interesting, but I could barely understand it. There are procedures under which certain types of immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, especially criminal immigrants convicted elsewhere, individuals who've come across the border more than once, do not get due process and they can be removed. That's a fact. And so you people arguing over things they don't even know. Things they don't even know. Now, there are basic due process rights beyond that. There was a big case in 2001, Zayas versus Davis. And the court basically said that you can't detain immigrants under the deportation orders indefinitely. So at some point they had to get some kind of process. The great Antonin Scalia dissented. He said, due process does not invest any alien with a right to enter the United States, nor confer on those admitted the right to remain in the United States against their national will. Man, do we miss him or not? Yeah, I'd say we do. But there was also a statute passed by Congress. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I believe it was in the 1990s when I was researching liberty and tyranny 15, 16 years ago. And my recollection is that, and I'm pretty sure of this, and Congress said it can be changed, it's not hard and fast, that if you're caught within 2 weeks and within 100 miles of the border, you can just be deported without any due process unless you claim asylum. Period. And I believe, as I recall, what was interesting about that law is the 14 days and 100 miles. That was the practice that was put in place, but that's not what the statute said. In other words, it could be more than 14 days or more than 100 miles. So that's pretty interesting too, don't you think? Let's see if I'm trying to look it up in the middle of this program, but it's going to be difficult to do that, I think. In any event, it doesn't matter. That's my recollection. I'm sure it's right. So it's not like in every case you get due process rights, and it also depends on what the immigrant has done, the nature of the immigrant's violation of any laws, the claim of the immigrant. So it's not like everybody gets due process like they're an American citizen. That's not the way it works. It's much more complicated than that. And the law that the president's using is it doesn't matter. Like with this Venezuelan gang is an international terrorist organization, is declared by the President and the Secretary of State, and that's enough. They're not to be second-guessed by any court. And in fact, we know Venezuela did empty its prisons and did send its gang members over here, so that's certainly an international issue, isn't it? So no federal district judge, or any court for that matter, has the power to reverse that. They don't have the authority. So that's not a matter of the American system being violated. That's a matter of the American system being upheld. These immigration laws, you know what's interesting? They say that particular immigration law is an old law. Well, doesn't that make it even more justifiable? In other words, it's not a law that was passed by this Republican Congress and signed by the President of the United States in the middle of the night 3 weeks ago. This has been on the books. And so if people are doing what they're doing, and they are, and it violates a law, it doesn't matter how old the law is. Geez, any of you lawyers out there, you ever go into court and is that a defense? You know, that's an old law. Is that a defense? No, it's ridiculous. And yet you're hearing this all over TV by the legal analysts and the former federal whatevers. But I heard one of these guys. It's amazing. One of these legal analysts, you'd know the name, but I'm not going to get into it. When I was on Fox saying, is really one of the only voices. And then brought in my buddy John Yoo, brought in my buddy David Schoen, and brought in a few other solid trustees. Some of these other guys are very solid. I said, wait a minute. This legal analyst, in response to me, without mentioning my name, of course, gutless. I brought hundreds, thousands of cases in front of judges, and some of them have been good judges and bad judges. They've made good rulings and bad rulings at sentencing, good rulings, bad rulings. That doesn't mean the judiciary's out of control. That just means you appeal it. You appeal the case. That's how you fix it. And I said on this microphone, what the hell is this person even talking about? It's apples and oranges. We're not talking about a single civil case or criminal case involving an individual or something. We're talking about the power of the executive branch being seized by a single judge in violation of separation of powers, undermining the executive branch and the power of the presidency. What does that have to do with thousands of cases in a courtroom, civil and criminal cases with individuals? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now that individual the other day, Mr. Producer, was regurgitating what I'm saying, like they just turn on a dime. On a dime. But this is why we do what we do here. Also, let me help some of the people out there on birthright citizenship. We have a Supreme Court decision in the late 1800s, they say, that says they conferred birthright citizenship on immigrants. That's true. They never conferred birthright citizenship on illegal aliens. Never. So that's number one. Read the friggin' cases before you go on TV and open your big mouth. Like you, meaning the many of them, some kind of an authority. That's number one. So that's never been adjudicated, ever. Number two, that case was the same court, just so you know, that ruled in Plessy versus Ferguson that separate but equal is equal, as segregation. Upheld segregation. Even though the privately owned train in Louisiana, they made the decision that blacks and whites would ride together in the train cars. The Supreme Court, upholding state law, said no. Separate but equal is equal. So you got the white train car, the black train car. The white water fountains, the black water fountains. That was your Supreme Court. Wherever the federal government has to step in. Well, it did. And it wasn't until Brown versus Board of Education, more than half a century later, that case was overturned. But anyway, get ahead of myself. Just be careful, these legal analysts who really don't know much about this stuff and act like they do. And watch how they switch, too. I've been talking about illegal immigration for decades. I started writing about it and talking about it before there was even a Fox network, Mr. Producer, before I was even on radio. This thing about importing Democrats, that is a phrase that I used and that I shared with Rush, and he used it, too. Because that's what it was always about, importing Democrats. And I took a lot of crap for saying it. Just like I do for saying other things I say, which happen to be 100% accurate. It just takes the will to say it. And then the other lawyers will eventually follow. But even worse, then they'll say, when I was leading the parade 2 years ago, it's hilarious watching these people. But no, due process does not apply to every single alien, number one. Number two, full due process under the Fifth Amendment that applies to citizens of the United States does not apply to every alien. Applies to some, but not to every. There are certain conditions on student visas, certain conditions on green cards that specifically do not confer full legal rights onto these individuals, or otherwise, look at the converse. If these clowns that you just heard me play on CNN, if these clowns are right, we don't have enough administrative law judges, we don't have enough federal district judges, we may not even have enough lawyers in this country to hear all the cases involved. As an example, Biden just let in 10 to 20 million people. They all have a right to due process? They all have a right to be heard by a judge? We don't have enough administrative law. We'll get more. We need 100,000 administrative law judges. How many more federal district judges? The reason we have administrative immigration law judges, we call them, is so they don't clog up our federal courts. But it's interesting how many of these cases these federal judges want to take up, isn't it? Just imagine clogging up our federal courts with it. We'd never have cases of any other sort for American citizens. So if these people really mean full due process rights, then they have a right, not in front of some administrative law judge, no offense. By the way, they don't even have to be lawyers. That could be good or bad, but I'm just saying the standard is reduced. They're not what we call Article 3 judges. They're not confirmed by anybody. They're bureaucrats. An administrative law judge is a bureaucrat. That's all they are. Bureaucrats appointed by bureaucrats. And by the way, the vast majority of them are weak on immigration. Very, very weak. They're taken from that pool of immigration lawyers who represent defendants, who represent migrants, and many of them illegal aliens. They're the ones who, many of them, not all, but many of them have become these administrative law judges. It's a big scam. And you're never going to have enough of them to handle 20 million migrants. Never. And they know it. So these clowns on TV, this is what I would say. So tell me, how are we going to handle 20 million people? Well, hire more judges. What? So they want to confer full citizen-type due process under our Constitution to anybody who walks into this country. That's not what the immigration laws say.
Mark Levin. The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
The terrorists became very mean and very cruel and violent.
More so.
Much more so. They were beating me and starving me.
Do you think they starved you, or they just didn't have food?
No, I think they starved me, and they would often eat in front of me and not offer me food.
How sick is Leslie Stahl, seriously? Takes up the cause of Hamas. This isn't the first time. Remember when she interviewed Trump about Biden, Hunter Biden, and the laptop and all the rest of it, that he's got a scandal surrounding him and all? And she said, come on now, come on. Remember all that? She is a low IQ, old lady buffoon who should get the hook. You know, ladies and gentlemen, about 100 years ago, there was a man by the name of William Paley. I mean, he lived longer than that, but I'm saying about the late 1920s, he really started this whole thing about the television networks. But before then, radio was the big thing. And there were a handful of really major, what we call heritage radio stations. One of them was, if not the first one, among the first, was WCAU in Philadelphia. It's now WPHT, and they've done a great job destroying it. Soros bought the station. through improper means. But we've talked about that before. Anyway, I grew up in Philadelphia, and I would listen to the Philadelphia stations, the big heritage stations, and I would listen to the New York stations. WOR, WABC. It was the golden age of radio. I would listen to WCAU, among others. And you could actually get WLS in Chicago and Philadelphia and some of these other stations. Every now and then I could pull the big Albany station. But in any event, so I was a radio junkie, talk radio junkie. As a kid, I would have my Radio Shack transistor radio right next to the bed when I was supposed to be sleeping. I'd have the antenna and I'd move it around. And so on WCAU. So he founded, Paley did, he founded WCAU and a few other stations, and radio got big. He created a little radio network, and then TV was the next big thing, and he got in on the ground floor there with the TV station in Philadelphia. And then he had the idea, as did others, but he most prominently, to create a network of television stations. So was born the Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS. William Paley was Jewish. And I dare say if he would hear what Leslie Stahl said on 60 Minutes, outright support for Hamas, outright attack on the Israelis, just so sick. And she began the program, even worse, we don't have that clip here, when she talked about 50,000, she said. 50,000 casualties. She never even mentioned where that was coming from. That's coming from Hamas. 50,000 casualties, she says. Coming from Hamas. Now, what's amazing about this is Hamas itself, yesterday, just corrected its numbers. It didn't correct it because all of a sudden it has a new view of the world. It corrected it because they were unsustainable. We have had statisticians come here and speak to you, independent statisticians that have said this can't be possible, what they're saying. I've done it on TV. She has access to this. Leslie Stahl. She has access to this. But she doesn't do it. She lies because she wants to lie. As do the rest of the media in this country. She wants to lie, so she lies about it. And regurgitates, continues to lie. Here it is. It's in the Jerusalem Post. It's also in the New York Post. Hamas admits 72% of deaths are combat-age men as it quietly reduces civilian death toll report. Quietly, it's right here. Hamas quietly removed the names of thousands of Palestinians it had previously alleged were killed during the Israel-Hamas war. So says the Honest Reporting Group organization with the Telegraph in Britain. Hamas has previously claimed 70% of casualties have been women and children. Every single serious statistician has looked at this and said that's an absolute impossibility. A claim no longer reflected in the recently updated lists, according to the research group. Approximately 72% of fatalities between the ages of 13 and 55 are men. The geographic category aligns with Hamas's combatants. Hamas's new March 2005 fatality list quietly drops 3,400 fully identified deaths listed in August and October 2024, including 1,080 children. The deaths never happened. The numbers were falsified again, said the research group. The research group called Honest Reporting. It's a liberal organization, by the way. Non-profit organization, told the Telegraph, which has become a liberal newspaper. It wasn't always, but it is. I wonder if 60 Minutes will correct it. You know, the same 60 Minutes that had a massive edit of Kamala Harris making an ass out of herself. Even the part they left in was horrendous, but they did that. Remember that? In order to try and protect her election potential possibilities against Trump. Similar report by the Henry Jackson Society in December also concluded that Hamas had inflated the number of casualties in the war. We knew there were rafts of errors in their reporting, said the author Andrew Fox. there's a reasonable explanation in that their computer system went down in November 2023. Yeah, that's it. The UN also just takes Hamas figures and publishes them with a note stating the figures are unconfirmed. But Leslie Stahl used their figures and didn't even say it was from Hamas. She just used them. Is that not horrendous? Every legitimate professional statistician who's looked at this, who looked at their material and their numbers, said no, it's a lie. And now Hamas is forced to correct it. Hamas. So the question is, will 60 Minutes correct it? Will it? Will 60 Minutes correct it? No, they won't. They won't correct it, and they won't fire her, even though she's a lowlife. And she is a lowlife. To put out crap like that? I mean, you got these anti-Semites with podcasts sitting on the edge of their chairs waiting for crap like this. And it is crap. Oh, here's one. Look at this. You Putinoids out there, pay attention. German intelligence, Russia planning large-scale war, testing NATO's resolve. Russia's military has increased by 30 to 50% since 2022, according to German intelligence. And I would think the anti-Semites out there, Mr. Producer, would like German intelligence, no? Just a thought. Let's see here. Their findings have led European officials to believe that Russia is preparing for a major war with NATO and European nations. According to findings from a joint investigation from German news outlets, must be neocon, German neocons, German warmongers. Germany has been a pacifist appeasement country for decades. According to the report, Russia sees itself having a larger conflict with the West. The report claims Putin's planning to use military force to achieve its imperialist goals, specifying the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine was merely a first step. You know, I've been warning about this, not because of things between my ears wandering around my imagination, but because Putin has said so. Now, I didn't get to interview Putin, obviously, but I would have questioned him about it. I would have been tough in my questions, but that wasn't meant to be. By the end of the decade, Russia will have laid the groundwork to establish a large-scale conventional war, according to a joint investigation by Germany. Excuse me, my German is not as it used to be. Russia's Baltic neighbors are not entirely confident in the country's current capabilities to wage war against NATO. The Lithuanian Special Service does, however, believe that Russia is certainly capable, carrying out a limited military action against one or more NATO countries. I've tried to explain this 1,000 times, that not only is Ukraine in the right morally in every other way, but Ukraine is the first step. And if they take out Ukraine, they're going to roll through Ukraine. That's Putin's view. That's what he has said. He has Poland in his eyes, in his sights. He's got the Balkan states in his eyes, even as Romania in his eyes. It's what he's written. It's what he said. Are you going to believe him or some a-hole who's an American laster? The forever wars. The worst war that can ever happen on this earth is the one that lasts 30 minutes. You know why, Mr. Producer? It's a nuclear war. People are so stupid. Germany's Federal Intelligence Service alleges that Putin is planning to test how seriously NATO countries will take their obligation to provide assistance. So he's looking for a weak NATO country, maybe one. I don't mean weak psychologically or intentionally. I mean a small country like one of the Balkan countries. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Or even looking at Poland, not that it's ultra weak, but it certainly can't stand up to Russia. And that's why Poland is pouring everything it has into the Ukraine right now. So is Romania. They're doing everything they can because they know what's coming or what may come. And so what they're saying is, okay, so Putin's going to hit one of these countries in a strategic attack and see what the West actually does about it. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine isn't provoking World War III. I'm not provoking World War III. General Kane's not provoking World War III. Douglas Murray's not provoking World War III. Zelensky's not provoking World War III. Putin is. Putin is. I know this upsets the Putinoids and gets their hemorrhoids in a particularly bad state. I know it does. And they'll come up with their fortune cookie labels and their bumper sticker labels. That's what they do. That's what they're good at. That's what they learned at the Quincy Institute of Bumper Sticker Diplomacy. These are stupid people who want you to ignore everything that's taking place, including an invasion, including the words that come out of this guy's mouth. But not me. I don't ignore it. We highlight it so you can make up your own mind. You know, folks, I believe our economy is strong. I believe there's opportunities everywhere. But I believe the Democrats are trying to sink it. They're going to try and stop the Trump budget. They're going to try and prevent the tax cuts that Trump wants. In fact, they want to raise your taxes by $5 trillion. They want to sink the economy. Because just remember, for the Democrat Party, it's about the party. Just like the Communist Party. It's not the country. It's the party. The leader of the party is the General Secretary, and he's the leader of the country.
Mark Levin. We're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
You've heard the line, buy low, sell high. There's people who understand the various aspects of the stock market who are probably going to be buying soon, waiting for it to go lower and lower and lower. People are waiting to grab up some companies or majority positions in companies, that sort of thing. You know, that's above my head and above most of yours. But the point is, the capitalist system is dynamic. It's like water that always finds a crack, no matter what you try and do. That's how capitalism works, because capitalism is based on freedom. It's based on freedom. And I want to go through a few more points with you, because you're going to hear this. You're going to hear the effort to stop the tax cuts. They stop the tax cuts, then we have a disaster on our hands. That's Mark's opinion. So let's look at this. Do tax cuts cause inflation? Do tax cuts cause deficits? No, tax cuts do not cause inflation, as I will explain in a moment, and no, tax cuts do not cause deficits. Mark, what are you talking about? Let's turn again to our friend Milton Friedman, who became really famous explaining monetary policy and explaining that inflation is caused by government, just like the Depression in the 30s was caused by government, not the private sector. Not the private sector. He said inflation is caused by an increase in the money supply, just like that Depression was caused by a 1/3 reduction in the money supply. He argued that inflation is always and is everywhere a monetary phenomenon, meaning that it can only be produced by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money in circulation. Just think of it as printing money, paper, even though it's electronic these days, but think of it as paper. You just can't keep producing paper. Friedman attributed the primary cause of inflation to government spending and government monetary policy. Now, what does that mean? You have these spending fanatics in Congress, and what the Fed does is it basically monetizes their spending and their debt. They try and use the money system, the money supply system, to address this massive fiscal irresponsible spending. And so rather than trying to prevent it, they contribute to it. But it all starts with Congress. So he said the primary cause of inflation is government spending, which leads to an increase in the money supply. And he famously stated that consumers and producers do not create inflation. That is, you do not create inflation. It is a result of the government's actions. So, in other words, the printing of money, the printing of paper, if you will. So when he said inflation is not created by consumers and producers, he was saying inflation is not created by the private sector. It's not created by the citizen. It's created by the federal government. Now, why did he say that? Because businesses and consumers create wealth and economic activity. You folks, you don't print money, you make money. The people you work for, if you don't work for yourself, they don't print money, they make money. The government prints money. It doesn't make money. See the difference, Mr. Producer? I came up with this, just so you know. Government does not make money. It prints money. And when the federal government spends and borrows money that it did not make, and that spending and borrowing exceeds the amount of money it receives in revenue, as it does year after year after year, the federal government is creating massive debt and massive inflation. Tax cuts. Do they create inflation? Do they create deficits? Tax cuts create economic growth, wealth, prosperity across the board. Across the board. They don't discriminate against one economic class or another. Remember what I said? It's like water. Tax cuts mean that the private sector, you, consumers, citizens, businesses, that you create the wealth. And you get to keep more of the wealth to make capital investments, for research and development, for new product, to expand your workforces, for higher pay, more benefits, to keep quality employees, and so forth. Tax cuts mean more money will flow from and to those who produce things and buy things. Unlike the government, which takes the money and redistributes it based on political and ideological decisions having absolutely nothing to do with economic conditions, economic growth, investment, or wealth creation. John Kennedy tax cuts created enormous wealth. The Ronald Reagan tax cuts created in the 1980s an explosion of economic growth and wealth. But there were deficits. Those deficits were created during Reagan's presidency. They were the result of massive spending, which Reagan desperately sought to control and block. But his efforts were usurped by Democrats and the rhinos. I looked at the numbers. The incoming revenue to the federal government was immense, but they kept spending more. Reagan shut down the federal government 6 times to try and stop them. And he still couldn't stop them. The Donald Trump tax cuts in 2017 created an explosion of economic growth. But the COVID spending and the Democrat massive spending on top of the COVID spending when Biden came in created a massive debt. Joe Biden and the Democrat Party, their massive spending spree and borrowing spree of trillions of dollars on top of the COVID funding that was still being spent, still circulating in the economy, deceivingly named the Inflation Reduction Act, resulted in massive printing of money by the trillions and massive inflation. Way too much paper. And thanks to Doge and Elon Musk and his people, you can see the hundreds and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that are being fraudulently spent. Utterly unnecessary. Utterly unnecessary. Which the Democrats and their media are perfectly happy with. Tax cuts do not cause inflation or deficits. The federal government does. Spending and borrowing. Taking money out of the productive sector and redistributing it based on politics and ideology. President Trump is trying to cut spending. The Democrats and their left-wing judges are trying to prevent him from cutting spending. President Trump is trying to shrink the size of the federal government. The Democrats and their left-wing judges are trying to prevent him from shrinking the size of the federal government. President Trump wants to not only continue the 2017 tax cuts he put in place, but expand them including lower tax rates, again for businesses and individuals, eliminating taxes on tips and overtime, provide tax credits to those who are helping loved ones in home care and so forth. The Democrats, well, they call this tax cuts for billionaires. I've already disproved this in the first hour. But let's say the billionaires benefited. Why does it matter? As long as you benefit. Because they don't want tax cuts, the Democrats. They don't want the regulations cut. They don't want cuts in the size of government. They don't want cuts in the size of the bureaucracy. They want the Trump economic plan to fail. They want America to fail. That's what's going on with them. I want you to keep this clip for all time because I'll be playing it in a few years. No question about it. No question about it. So Moskowitz is on the Constipated News Network, and I predict in 10 years the CNN won't exist anymore. Why should it? Why would it? Now, Wolf Blitzer might still be around doing hosting. You know, the sort of the Joe Biden of journalists. But let's listen to what Jared Moskowitz has to say on CNN. I'm sure it's profound and compelling. Cut 10, go.
Are you not enjoying the golden age? I mean, unfortunately, we live in such a time now that politics has become such a team sport.
Now listen to this clown. Talks about politics a team sport while he's practicing it right in front of you. Such an ass. What a moron. Go ahead.
Can only imagine.
So he just says that politics is a team sport, right? I can only imagine if Joe Biden attacked the stock market. Go ahead.
Tanked the stock market by 4,000 points. Or
he didn't tank it by 4,000 points? What's he looking at, Mr. Producer? What's this guy even talking about? But go ahead.
Policy that we then woke up the next day where the Dow was going to fall 1,200 points on opening. I mean, there wouldn't be enough TV time or podcast time or radio time in the day for Republicans to flood the airwaves talking about how Joe Biden is putting us into a recession. And so, look, Republicans got to wake up because, you know, the Trump administration...
All right, thanks a lot, pal. You voted to spend trillions and trillions of dollars that created inflation. Trump's trying to unravel this. Yes, it's going to be bouncy. Always has been. There's somebody that actually knows what he's talking about, little fella. Somebody who served in the Reagan administration for 8 years. There's somebody who remembers what took place in those first 2 years of the Reagan administration, trying to do what another Democrat did. You might remember Jimmy Carter. Massive inflation. Massive inflation. It took Reagan time to undo it. And when he did, my God, the economy exploded in growth like we'd never seen before in our lifetimes. And that's the plan here, too. That's the plan here, too. You slip and fall politicians, you ambulance placing politicians, you got all the lingo down, you got the lines down, really smooth. Not really, but, you know, you are what you are. This is why you're a complete turnoff to the American people. Tell me, anybody, what has Jared Moskowitz done to improve our economy? As one of the soldiers for Biden or now? Nothing. He's a nobody. He's a backbencher, and he's barely that. He's barely that. Now, what would we have discussed? We've been discussing it the whole day, have we not, Mr. Producer? I've been discussing economics the whole day, tariffs the whole day, tax cuts the whole day, deficits, debt, the size of government. What the plan is, whether it's playing out, how it's going to play out, that they got to get the tax cuts in order to make sure that the process works. We've gone into history, the industrial revolutions. We've gone into history of depressions. So what would they talk about on talk radio? What would they talk about? There would be enough time to talk. Moron. The point isn't what subject generally you would talk about, how would you talk about it? You see the difference? This guy is a soundbite political hack. That's all he is. He's a soundbite political hack. It literally took me an hour and a half with commercials to go through this whole thing. That's way too long for a guy that's got the mind of a walnut. It just is. Moskowitz. It's too much with the team sports. And then he immediately does the team sports thing. It's hilarious and stupid. And stupid. The stock market will not be down forever. It never has been. Jared, why didn't you mention that on CNN? We know why there's a chill in the stock market. Because the president is doing things that many of these companies don't expect. We understand that too. We understand why before the Reagan economic revolution finally took hold after 14 or 18 months, that there was some economic dislocation, including in the stock market and in the housing market. You have to wring the bad economy out in order to get the good economy. You know who even told me this? I can't get into specifics to violate confidentiality, but a woman I know who never went to college, somebody who's very smart, lady the family and I like, and she helps one of our family members. And she said, I understand that in order to get the economy going again, that it's going to require, first of all, wrestling the bad economy to the ground so the good economy can get up. This is the way she explained it. But this is way too sophisticated for Moskowitz. Imagine waking up in the morning. 1,200-point drop in the stock market. Now, you don't like to see that. Now, many of you have investments in the stock market. It's not you're playing the stock market, but you have pensions. IRA, 401k, whatever it is. And it goes up and it goes down. And this is why I always talk about on this program diversification. Diversification is crucial. I don't put a lot of money in the stock market. I put it in government notes, gold, other things like that. It's just done well by us. May not go as high as others, but it doesn't drop as far as others. But that's not the point either. The point is you diversify, you cover yourself for a day like this. And a lot of people who understand these markets are going to buy. They're going to look at a Disney and say, wait a minute, they dropped 20%? And I don't know that they did. I'm just talking as an example, hypothetical. Wow, now's the time to jump in. It's like real estate. The lot that we bought in Florida 12, 13 years ago, the market had dropped. It was dead. So I went there and I bought this lot. I couldn't afford the lot today if my life depended on it. No matter what you folks think, I certainly couldn't. But I did back then because I got it very inexpensively because the market was dead. So there's opportunities out there too, but that's not even the point. The point is this guy's he's not serious, he's not intelligent. He's he talks by very short attention span. We just went into the whole history of this stuff, industrial revolutions, the two Great Depressions, what were done in response to them, what was not done in response to them. And what Donald Trump is trying to do here is not shoot from the hip. It's not wild-eyed. It's different, and yet in some ways it's not. The tariffs. We've done tariffs throughout our country's history. He's doing them differently. We've had tax cuts before. His tax cut, if he can get it through, will be akin to the Reagan tax cut, which created massive growth. He's slashing regulations like no president before him. And we've had a period of hyper-regulations under Biden, Obama, and Clinton. He's wrestling government to the ground with Elon Musk and the boys and girls like no president before him because it's so completely out of control. So things are happening that are moving in the right direction when you step back and you look at it. Now, a market drop of whatever, I think it was 1,600 points today, something like that. We don't cheer that on, but I can tell you, in the past, the market drops, the market goes up. Sometimes it drops a lot, sometimes it goes up. How many times have you heard me when I talk about Advantage Gold? The market's volatile. Sometimes it goes down. We had a period where it went down for 10 days in a row a couple of months ago, or maybe it was a month ago. It does what it does. We have no control over it. It's the market. It's people making decisions. It's not even the whole market. It's people who are members and investors in these companies, in the various stock markets. Great. I barely even pay attention to them. Do you, Rich? I just don't. And if you're have money in an IRA or a 401k or an investment like that, you're not looking at it every day. If you're 50 years old or 43 years old or whatever, unless you're close to retirement, you're not looking at that every day, and you're not supposed to. You just let it ride because you've diversified. In the stock portfolio or with your IRA, and it doesn't mean you need to be that knowledgeable or that you're a player in the stock market. 99% of us are not. But you know it's here and there will go up and down. But in the end, it keeps nudging up, 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 up. Even after the Great Depression, nudged up, 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 up. Just saying. But Jared Moskowitz has been pretty much on the public payroll his whole fantastic career. I'm just guessing. As has Bernie the Red. As has Schmucky Chucky Schumer. We'll see what happens, obviously. But I'm now giving you more meat on the bone here and explaining what I think the attempt is here. And it's very rational. It's very rational. I'm not a tariff guy, but it's very rational what President Trump is trying to do. As you're waking up and finding out that... what a schmuck.